The new Mantis X10 firearms performance system has all the goodness of the original, plus holster draw analysis and recoil analysis. It's a fantastic upgrade and I recommend it highly.
Hey guys, my name is Brian Hill. I'm the head coach and founder of The Complete Combatant, and I'm a professional firearms trainer, and I am an obsessive daily practicer with my dry practice. I'd like to thank ASP for having me here today, and John Correa and all the crew. It's a great honor to talk to you guys. This video is going to be about specifically the safety rules and how they guide and impact our practice. All right. Some of you may be new gun owners. Welcome to our firearms community. We're so glad to have you. We have some rules in place of how we practice and approach firearms, and I'm going to go over them today, but I'm also going to show you how you practice that physically with dry practice. So instead of just words that we tell you to repeat, I'm going to give you obvious examples and the best practices for each. It's important to think about these rules in their totality of how they affect us and how they affect interacting with it. The first rule is that all guns are always loaded. It's an interesting rule because it's going to affect, the word I like to use is our approach to how we interact with the firearm. How are we going to approach that firearm? If it's loaded, we need to do certain things. And I have two examples here. I brought a Striker Fire VP9 and I also have a Revolver down here. Each one of them is going to require a little different manual of arms, which means how do we operate it? Right? If they're always loaded, the first thing for me to do is to check and see what the condition is. I need to physically check and open it and look inside, and visually I need to see what's going on as I do it with my hands. So let's look at this. In this one, the slide is already open, so I can visually look in there and there's no magazine in it. If it was already closed, what I'd simply do is when I pick it up carefully with my hand and then rotate it, and I'm going to work the slide. If there was a magazine in it, I want to take the magazine out first. So that's what feeds it. And then I'm going to work the slide a couple times. Now there's a button on this side, which is your slide stop, your slide release, and I'm going to push that up with my thumb, and that's going to keep the slide open. Most firearms are going to work that way that are striker fire or double action, single action firearms. You'll be able to lock it open. Then I want to look inside of it. I want to use my finger to check, and I want to do this a couple times, because if we think we're going to see something, the mind will provide that image. What I really want to do is I want to check. John likes to say, tell me the condition of my firearm. So I want to look in there. Seems to be clear. This gun's good to go. The Revolver is a similar process, but slightly different. The cylinder is what holds the bullets. So we have a release on the side of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two fingers and put it right here, and I'm going to push that release forward, and that's going to push the cylinder out. Okay? Now to unload it, simply strike this ejection rod here, and then I'm going to look down. I'll take my thumb and rotate it and make sure that I see each cylinder is clear. All right, because there could be 6 bullets. This Revolver holds 7, but I want to make sure each one is clear and there's nothing in it. All right, so now I've cleared my firearms and I'm ready to practice it. I'm always going to approach them that way. Anytime you pick up a firearm, you transfer it from one person to another, this should be the practice. You should go ahead and check. Taking somebody's word for it is simply not enough. You need to know this firearm is loaded until you check and make sure it's empty. All right, I have a cool little device here that makes sure that no rounds can be in the magazine. It's a tap rack trainer. I'm going to get into that in further videos, things that can assist you in your dry fire, but this means I could put the magazine back in and nothing will load. It's got a cool orange color. Orange is for safety. We know that that's not a round and can't load the gun. The next rule is don't allow the muzzle to cover anything that you're not willing to destroy. All right, and I call this one the attention rule. Where is my attention? The attention of the gun is simply this thing where the barrel points. So that will be the attention of the gun. If you see I'm pointing it straight up right now, which is a safe direction for me, or I could be pointing it straight down this way. I don't want to point it at anything I'm not willing to destroy. I have to be very careful with that. So I'm going to point it at the camera because there's nobody behind the camera. It's a safe direction. And you guys have seen, once again, that the firearm was cleared by the first rule. Okay? So I check. Now I'm going to practice pointing my muzzle in safe directions. If I had a threat in front of me but I wasn't ready to shoot, it would be slightly off, and then my muzzle would go into the target. What a lot of people don't realize is it's not simply muzzling other people, but yourself that is a big problem with firearms owners. Our hand can't get in front of this muzzle. So if we're doing something with the other hand, like going to holster, oftentimes if you have a holster that collapses, you'll be using your hand to pry it open. And there's simply no way to get that gun back to the holster without muzzling yourself. All right? You have to be careful of going over your foot, going over your leg, or slightly tilting that gun in that'll muzzle your hip. So be very, very careful with that. If you noticed, I still kept the gun away from myself because these rules are constant for me and I don't want to muzzle myself. So wherever the direction is, that's really important. If an unintentional discharge were to happen and the muzzle's pointed in a safe direction, it's a very scary event, but nobody's harmed. So be very careful with muzzle direction. Always see where it's pointing. Make sure you're not the one being muzzled or anybody else. And that's the attention of the firearm. Now the third rule is a very combinational rule. Our finger stays off the trigger until our sights are on the target. I always like to say, and I made a decision to shoot. Those things need to go together. So this rule becomes the decisional rule. Right? If you pick up a gun and you're safe, your finger will be in this position. So in dry practice, I want my finger in this position. Whenever I'm not going to shoot, my finger is going to be in that position. Okay? But if I make the decision to shoot and the sights are on the target, like I'm about to do to you guys, I'm going to take the gun in this position. Now the sights have come up, my eye's behind it, and my finger goes to the trigger because I've made a decision to shoot. If I decide not to shoot, I'm going to move the gun off and go to some sort of ready position. My finger comes off. So whenever the decision is to shoot, muzzle goes on, finger goes to the trigger. As soon as it comes off, it goes. Now, interestingly enough, there's two things that happen for gun owners on this one. Is you get so safe that your finger stays up here all the time, even when you're aiming the gun. And when you're aiming the gun, you'll do all the aiming, and then you've decided to shoot, now you're going to move your finger. Remember, you were aiming with something that you're going to ruin anyway because you have to move the finger. Watch what happens to the muzzle as soon as I do that. So if I've decided to shoot, my sights are on the target, I'm going to put my finger on the trigger. If I'm not going to shoot, I'm going to move the sights off the target and the muzzle off. Finger comes off too. It's a hard one. Finger trigger discipline is one of the harder rules. And when people get nervous in a situation, their finger tends to come to the trigger all the time. We do a lot of force on force, and we'll see people touching it to see if it's there. So be very, very careful with this, that your finger doesn't slip back in there. You've got to be very disciplined about that finger. Okay? That's your decisional process. Next one is surroundings, and I like to call this the awareness rule. It is be aware of your target and its background. I'm a graduate from Force Science Institute, Force Science Analyst. One of the things that they stress is a term called inattentional blindness. And what it means is you can simply overlook something when you're really concentrating on something else. So if I was looking at my finger here, I can really concentrate on my finger, but the camera disappears behind me. If I'm looking at the camera, I actually can ghostly look through my finger. It becomes not important anymore. And that's what inattentional blindness is. As an armed citizen, if we decide to defend ourselves with a firearm, the only safe place for us to shoot is at the violent criminal actor. All right? We can't shoot anywhere else. We have to be very aware of those rounds, of where they might be going. So the rule is shoot to the target. That means you need to be accurate, and you may not be aware of everything going on. If that target suddenly disappears, you're going to go back to the previous decisional rule. We're going to take the sights off the target and take our finger off of it. We're going to work back and forth so they work together. That one is your awareness rule. Am I aware of the surroundings? Am I aware of the target? Sometimes I use targets like this, which are no-shoot targets in competition. So the white background, you're not supposed to shoot. They were shot from this side. That's where the holes are in it. Okay? And I'll put it in front of one of the targets, and I'll practice going from a no-shoot to a target. No-shoot to a target. It gives me a good practice with that. There's another rule that doesn't exist in the form, okay? And that is dropped guns. What if for some reason during my practice I went too fast or I fumbled on the range? What do I do with that gun as it falls? Nothing. Let it fall. We call it let falling guns fall. You've interrupted your process, and that's the word I like to use around this. If the process is interrupted for any reason, you lose control of the gun, let the gun go. Okay? Let it fall to the ground. Most of the weight in firearms is in the magazine end, so they tend to rotate towards the bottom. And then if we reach for the gun, our thumb or our finger goes inside the trigger guard, and you can imagine which way the muzzle is pointing. It's hard to let a gun go It happens occasionally in practice where you do something and you get caught in your shirt or on your holster and it falls out. Be really careful of that. The other side is we want to be super careful when we go to put the gun away. Okay? There's no reason to do anything fast when we're done with either shooting or dry practice and we go to put the gun back in the holster. That's a very slow and deliberate process. We want to put it back in. Tom Givens likes to say slowly and reluctantly. I think that's a good way to do it. There's no rush. If you're practicing quickly in dry practice, don't holster quickly on the way back. You have to have two different speeds. So, giving you 5 things to think about: how to approach the firearm, where your attention with the muzzle should be, okay? What the decision is between the sights and the muzzle and the trigger finger, how your awareness is of what you're capable of. The human being is seeing the target and its backgrounds. And then the last one is the process, staying in the process and making a good decision. If the gun was dropped, we let it go. Let's see how this looks in dry practice itself. So I've just picked the firearm up. Okay? As I pick the firearm up, I'm practicing my trigger finger discipline. See how far away it is? If it was here and I grab something with the other hand, see what happens? That finger goes to the trigger. So I want it up and away. As I practice picking it up, I want to verify that it's unloaded. I want to verify the condition. So I locked the slide open, I looked in, and I checked it. All right, now I know my gun's ready for practice. Now we're going to start practicing the rules. If I'm going to not shoot, my muzzle is away from the target. Pick a ready system that works for you. Your state laws may affect that a little bit. We'll talk about that further in the next video. But here my muzzle is averted. Now I'm going to be coming to the target. As I come to the target, I want to bring my finger to the trigger. My sights are on the target, and I have an empty firearm, so I can simply press the trigger. Now, if I want to do that again, I bring it back, work the slide, which is good practice. We're doing all the administrative handling of the gun, and we're getting better and better at that. So now I'm going to see the sights. Now, here's my follow-through. My finger comes off, my gun goes down, I take a second and process, and I bring the gun back in. Work the slide again. Fingers in a safe position, muzzle's in a safe position, to the target, press, finger comes off, muzzle comes off, bring it back to a safe position. As you can see, the safety is being guiding the whole time of my practice. Every safety rule is also a way for us to practice better. And it keeps us safe, but it also teaches us what the right decisions are with a firearm. All right? So remember your 4 rules. All guns are always loaded. All right? Never cover anything you're not willing to destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger until the sights are on the target. You made a decision to shoot. Be aware of your target and its surroundings. Okay? Make sure that your dry practice becomes a part of that, and then those words have meaning and action. How do the actions go together with it? And it'll guide your practice. I think everybody would be good with this lesson. I teach all the way up to master class shooters. But I also teach entry-level shooters because it's important for me to remember what it was like to begin your journey with a firearm and to join the shooting community. And I really enjoy seeing people learn how to handle firearms competently and with confidence and get the great enjoyment out of shooting also, but also be able to effectively protect themselves and make good decisions. This is going to be a great set of rules for you to work on. If you would like to talk to us or send us any comments, our website is thecompletecombatant.com. We have all the social media. We have a YouTube channel. I'd like to thank ASP for allowing us to do this. It's a great honor, and I want to thank you guys for letting me come in and teach for a little while. We'll have a couple more videos coming out, and if you have anything that you need from us, please reach out. Don't hesitate. Thank you so much.